Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to Kick Rock's podcast, Two Drink Minimum. This is a special episode coming at you for you technical lovers out there. We've got Sergio and JT, our two resident editing extraordinaires, talking shop about editing and editing in movies that they enjoy and like, and maybe have influenced them through the years. Who knows? The only way you're going to know is if you listen to this podcast. So thank you so much for tuning in. So kick back, relax, have a drink with us, and enjoy.
What's up, JT?
Hello, everyone. This is Bill, and we're here. The four of us.
No, actually, it's just JT and Sergio this time.
It's unfortunate. The other guys couldn't make it tonight, so we decided we're just going to go ahead and do this without them.
They said something about coronavirus. I don't know what it is, though.
Yeah, who knows? Heard the same thing. But yeah. It is just the two of us, and we are going to be talking about something that just the two of us really know and do a lot in regards to Kick Rock, which is a lot of the behind, not necessarily behind the scenes, but the post-production work. Little does everybody know, it's really JT and I who handle the editing for most of the Kick Rock work. As you all do know, we collaborate in the storytelling. We brainstorm together. We write together. We do individual sketches. We
bathe together.
We bathe together. But then once the camera is done rolling and we are wrapped on set, it's usually JT and I, working through the editing process, and then we do share everything with the group, and we go through that, editing version 1, version 2, version 3 until we're all happy. But so we figured tonight we're just gonna talk about that editing process, a little bit about our history. Then we'll jump into editors or films that were just amazingly edited, like which is our favorite and what really inspired us growing up, and which ones do we love now or reference back to. So I guess we'll just go ahead and start. JT, do you want to just give a little bit of your quick background about you and editing and how you got into it and what inspired you and stuff like that?
Yeah, I graduated Columbia College with a concentration in television post-production in 2000. I'm just kidding, 2005. And I've been working professionally since 2006. I had a brief stint at Midway Airport. I was the guy who was pointing those glowy sticks to make planes take off and stuff.
I almost feel like that's an interesting. That's like something that I want to talk about altogether.
You
that's
think
like
it was
crazy.
cool? I made like McDonald's level money and quit in 1.5 weeks.
So we are.
I went to Atlanta for 2 weeks. And I took plane school down there, AirTran. It was for AirTran, how to do all the airplane stuff there. And then I was like, this sucks. I'm out.
That's crazy.
Yeah, getting yelled at by my parents. Why don't you get an actual job? Oh, the carpenters union is paying that. And it's like, no, we want to work in TV. So eventually I did find a job at it was a place called VidTech Audio Visual, and I was like. A third of the time I was delivering AV equipment to banquet halls and things like that for meetings and shit like that. And I filmed a lot, but I also did some cool stuff because there was a cool guy named Andy that used to work for the United Center, and he was friends with Gene Honda and stuff, the announcer for the White Sox and Blackhawks. So I got to do some cool stuff with him. We shot these segments that aired on these buses that drove around the suburbs, and edited Benny the Bull sketches and weird stuff like that. You know what I mean? So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I did all kinds of random stuff with that, and I did this documentary that he helped shoot that was for Comcast Sportsnet. That was I got to shoot and edit this hour-long piece with people from the White Sox and stuff like that. It was about the Vietnam traveling wall. It was not the real Vietnam Wall, but a replica that traveled all around the country, and all these literally 10,000 bikers motorcycle dudes. It was either 5,000 or 10,000.
Okay.
It was a lot. Like we like followed them, like go from place to place, like with this traveling wall thing.
So you got to like just jump in a van or something and drive around cross country with following these people, documenting it all.
At least like in the sticks in this state, in Illinois.
Okay.
So that was kind of neat at the time, and I did a lot of random stuff there. It was like as cruddy and entry level as that job was, I actually got to do some cool stuff.
Well, again, you were probably working for McDonald's wages again.
I was.
but doing something that's a little bit more fun than waving some glowing sticks.
I did some live concert footage too. That was kind of fun. I actually got to edit like a live band and everything, and actually like be involved in like the mix, of like the instruments and everything.
Oh yeah.
Like as much as at the actual cutting of the shots and stuff, like, oh, the keyboard's doing his solo, cut to this, go wide again. You know what I mean? Like, and work with the band and stuff, and they actually paid me some money on the table. Like it was actually
even better.
I don't know. Like, actually, I got to hang out with the cast at Animal House one day. Like,
how did that happen?
Yeah, this was okay.
Because like Animal House was obviously made a little bit before.
So it was this dumb little place in Lisle, but we in Lisle, Illinois, the west suburbs, and like we were close to Woodridge, Hollywood Boulevard Theater. Have you been there?
No, I have not.
Oh, okay. It's like it's like this memorabilia laden theater that shows modern movies and all. It's just a regular theater, but when you go in there, you got like kind of swivel chairs and like tabletops, and they actually serve you like actual food. Like there's a menu, like you get salad or chicken fingers or pizza or whatever, like while you're eating and watching the movie, and they serve drinks there and stuff. So it's kind of like a dine in movie theater.
Okay.
And every theater there has its own theme. There's like a Star Wars one, a Wizard of Oz one. The guy who runs the place was obsessed with Wizard of Oz. I don't know if it's the same guy who still runs it, but he was. And we even got to the first time I ever went to LA. I'm starting to remember how much I did there. Jesus. The first time I went to LA was for Hollywood Boulevard. The guy helped sponsor the Munchkins, the surviving Munchkins. This was back in 2007. Really? The surviving Munchkins from the Wizard of Oz. Now there's none left, but then there were like a dozen. And they were like 90 something years old, like these little people and stuff. And like he sponsored like getting them their own Hollywood star on the Walk of Fame. So
really?
Like, I got to go there and document
each individually or as like a group?
As a group. So there's like a star there for the Munchkins.
Gotcha.
So like that guy sponsored it. Me and my coworker were sent to LA to go and shoot it, document it, and I edited it when I got back, and we sent it out to news, like as a news package to the local stations and all that stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty fun. And that's kind of what planted the seeds of me wanting to move out there for a little while too. And then like
because you did move out there, right?
Briefly, yeah.
Yeah, for a short stint.
Yeah, just like 4 months or something until I ran out of money and came back.
At least you did it. I never made that leap. Yes. I just stayed here.
So there was the Animal House thing. Like it was like at Hollywood Boulevard, and there were like 6 cast members. I got to meet Karen Allen. I got to meet a couple of the other ones. And yeah, that was pretty fun. Again, shooting them and making news packages and stuff like that. So
very cool.
Yeah, I did a couple of okay things there. Most of the time it sucked, and my boss was kind of weird, but
at the end of the day, whatever career you have, I feel like work is work, and there's going to be stuff that sucks, and there's going to be, it's like 20% really, really cool stuff and 80% like, I got to go to work today. This really sucks.
What's funny too is that I feel like I can shoot anything now because when the Sears Center got built in Hoffman Estates,
it's
like that big,
that I do know, yeah.
Right. And like they had a few like soccer teams and what do you call it? Like minor league sports, Like it was an indoor soccer team.
Yeah, I think they have that one like weird football, like I don't know. I remember where they were doing that indoor like football extreme thing. And I think they played there a couple times.
There was that, and there was a lacrosse, and they were called the Shamrocks. There was a Shamrock team, lacrosse team, and I was like one of 2 shooters for like the Diamond Vision,
Okay.
Jumbotron. I don't know, is it industry people that call it Diamond Vision, and like
I know like, Jumbotron.
And like, Jumbotron is like the non-industry term. I don't know which it is. But like,
I think just the regular consumers like me know it as Jumbotron.
Yeah, because when I got to Feld later, like they would correct me and say Diamond Vision. I'm like, what the fuck does that even mean? Was that a specific term for someplace? I don't know. But
so then what happened?
So I got to shoot for lacrosse. So like, just think about lacrosse. Like they're whipping that tiny ball with those sticks like at each other, and I'm looking through like a black and white like viewfinder in this dumb camera trying to follow it. You know what I mean? And like I was probably like, whoa, like all over the place for like the first like 1 or 2 times.
Did you have to edit the footage yourself?
No, actually.
Okay, because that probably was chaotic.
We had
it was live.
We actually had a production truck.
Okay.
Yeah, so like they were cutting it in there, and like but like after a while of like shooting that, it was like pew, 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 but like I could actually like follow it, you know what I mean? Like I was like, yeah, I got this down, you know what I mean? So now I'm like, I can follow anything, I can shoot anything because I fucking shot lacrosse, you know what I mean? Like,
man.
I don't know, it was crazy.
You got to write a sketch about like the life that a lacrosse ball goes through, and it's just you following a lacrosse ball with some like voiceover. And it's like, literally just screaming, ah!
Just whipping it like POV style, like Evil Dead, like flying from net to net.
Exactly.
Whatever those things are called.
Exactly.
Cross rackets.
That's awesome.
What are those called?
I don't know.
I'm not Googling.
I think lacrosse net is just good enough. All right. So after that gig, because I didn't know you when you did all that work. That's pretty cool. I think I knew you when you went to
Feld.
Yeah.
For Feld Entertainment, and they owned.
So was that the next one after this job, or were there a couple things in between?
I spent some time in LA, and oh god, did I even do any video work out there?
Was it more just job searching?
Yeah,
hoping?
It was job searching.
Yeah,
there was fun. This is non-video, but I drove around in a SUV following my friend Janelle, who had a number of promotional gigs back then. She's like a cute girl and stuff, so she was like getting jobs like doing like Monster
like
Energy.
The marketing things,
like Monster Energy girl, like and stuff like that, that kind of thing. She drove around in a giant like stiletto shoe, like a giant red high-heeled shoe, like that was motorized and built out of a motorcycle engine. And I was like the guy in the suit that had to follow behind her in like the SUV to make sure everything was fine and the promotion was going fine, and I had like the trailer hitch attached to it that like we had to put the shoe back on when we were done. It's one of the only jobs I had while I was out there. And then like I almost worked on a Stan Lee documentary that I ended up actually seeing in the theater like a year and a half later.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah, that would have been right up my alley and all that stuff. I would have done a bunch of motion graphics for that, but I had to call the guy on my way home. I was like halfway through Utah when I was like, no, I don't think I can.
Oh, no. Damn.
But it was for like no pay, so.
Yeah. Yeah, you already made that
exposure kind of gigs.
Yeah, that sucks. All right, so you came home, you went, and then you ended up getting a job at Feld, or is there something in between there?
Yeah, pretty much right away, within like 2 weeks or something. And then I spent eight goddamn years there.
Did you leverage like, oh yeah, I was in LA doing some projects, not emphasizing the fact that it was driving a large shoe around?
Yeah, probably.
I mean, when it comes to getting a new job, there's nothing wrong with, embellishing slightly some of the projects that you worked on in the past. I'm sure I have. I'm sure everyone has.
Right. Feld was 8 straight years of like a lot of grunt work, like as far as editing goes. This time was cool because I was actually just an editor and I was working in a much more stable environment.
Okay.
I mean, there were still some characters and I still made some friends there and all that stuff, but it's just like, I don't know. I always noticed that, like, did you notice this? That like corporate places have their ups and downs and private places have their ups and downs, because it's like small private places are like, you got to deal with personalities and like everything seems a little unhinged,
Mm-hmm.
Like
a little less organized,
right?
A little less
feel
rules,
you feel like you could get in a fist fight at one of those places, but like in a corporate place, like, like you feel like a automaton or something.
Yeah, so many rules and things that you have to follow,
but it's also kind of better sometimes because it's just like people leave you the fuck alone, I don't know. Like, it's just like, I don't know. It's just breezier or something. And it just feels more professional.
Right.
I don't know. So there's like gives and takes with that stuff,
Yeah.
So it's like you could probably joke around more, like at a
private small.
Yeah, at a smaller place, but
yeah.
I don't know. So it's fine. And my sensibilities lie directly in the middle of that. So I don't know, but it was cool because it was Monster Jam, Monster Trucks, which I'd never heard of until I worked there. But now I know it like the back of my hand, like Gravedigger and Maximum Destruction and all that.
Yeah. I mean, I've always known of it, and I've always seen like those, like the commercials where it's like there's an expo where it's coming through, or like some show that's coming through. Right. I've always remember seeing those, but it wasn't until I met you and then you talked about your work that I'm like, holy crap, like this stuff is happening constantly year round around the entire country, continent.
Right.
Globally too, right? I mean, how much footage?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Totally. Like, would you get a lot of footage from like Italy or whatever?
Yeah, I was like editing stuff from like Denmark and all kinds of crazy stuff,
Yeah.
And Australia, and yeah, it was cool. So most of the time, I literally made thousands of commercials a year. Like it was just like an assembly line of stuff because it was just like 2 writers in a room jamming out scripts. And most of them were interchangeable. They barely had like any creative input. That's basically how it was. It was like barely any creative input. Yeah, just throwing it out, and it's like
swap out a date or whatever,
right.
Like minor details.
Right. So the script writers did it. They sent it to like these guys that would do the voiceovers, like David Lee and stuff like that, and like they would send it back. We would get the audio files. We always did it there. And we get the audio files. They tell us when the audio file's in. We put them in the commercial. We like work our timeline of editing on top of that. And we're only allowed to use footage of the trucks that appear at that show. At least that's what our boss told us, because it's like, like somebody could be like, oh my God, Gravedigger's coming. You know what I mean? But then they show up and it's like, the stupid one that nobody cares about, you know what I mean? Like, so if that truck isn't there, we can't show it, kind of thing. And sometimes,
so there's more than one Gravedigger?
Yeah, there were other dudes, like there were a few of them. There were a couple of different guys driving them. It's the same family actually, but like the thing was like there were just like 40 or 50 trucks, and it's like any given 5 of them would be at a show.
Okay.
And then it's like they would tell us you can only use footage of those 5 or generic shots that you can't tell who it is.
Gotcha.
But sometimes like a lot of the venues, they pour dirt in it, so it's like a dirt show or a show where it's just like concrete, like on the floor. So that was called a non-dirt show. And like, it was probably boring for a lot of people, but it's just like, but sometimes there would be a non-dirt show with 5 trucks that nobody gave a shit about and we didn't have footage of. You know what I mean? And so it would be like, you had to like throw together the worst looking commercial in the universe and then get it approved by somebody. And they would say like, well, this is generic crap. And it's like, you told us to do generic crap. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So there's like no way out sometimes, but whatever.
Oh man. Were you able to like try to crop out like the ground and just like do from
sometimes there would be like
wheels up?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When they were doing a jump and they were jumping toward the camera, you know what I mean? So it would be like 5 trucks jumping toward the camera for about 7 seconds of the 30 seconds. And the other 23 was people yelling in a crowd. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And then somebody's like, oh, I can't use that crowd shot anymore because that one has that's right. And when we sent stuff to Canada, Canada like has their own like standards and practices thing.
Yeah.
And if there's even a drop of alcohol showing.
Oh.
Like, so it's like if somebody's holding a cup, sometimes just a cup. And it's just like, it's like that looks like beer, so it can't air. And so we had to go back, and now like the air date is like might be compromised or whatever because we have to go change it. And you know what I mean? Like, and sometimes it took them 3 or 4 days to get back to us. So it'd be like, all right, now we got to change out this one shot or zoom in to crop it, and then suddenly it looks like 480 instead of 720.
It's like so. A lot of this insight is like really helping me understand how you've always just been really fast at getting like complicated edit for instance, like a lot of the past Halloween ones that we did.
Right.
Granted, it took you a minute to get started on them, but once you started them, it'd be like, bam, you get them done. But it makes complete sense because you were working a job of editing where you're like on like under the gun and with a lot of pressure to get it done. So you're probably just used to, once you got started, it's like, I know exactly what I need to do. Boom, 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 boom. And you get it done.
Right.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Basically. And, oh my God. I had so many spats with this lady who worked with me, who was like
they're not here anymore, so you can say whatever you want.
I'm not gonna say her name, but I hated her fucking guts. Like, I don't know. Oh, she was so annoying. It was just like, it's like, where is this? Where is this? Where is this? And then like you send an email response that's like, I'm working on it. And then like you realize that she was like blind CCing you on like other managers and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like one of those like just throw you the like any tiny thing you did under the bus, under the bus, under the bus, under the bus, and it's just like, like, because our busy time was from late October to like early April.
Okay.
And it was like, that's when, like starting in January is when our properties like went out into arenas and stadiums. So it was like, okay, this is when it starts kind of, you feel the rush slowly start to, it's like the first city comes through and you do that. And then you've got 3 cities to do in one day, and then 4, and then 4, and then 4. Right. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it gets completely insane.
Wow.
And then after a while, toward the last couple of years there, we had to add closed captioning. Because China... I
remember us having these conversations.
Yeah, because Canada passed another... Fuck Canada, dude. I'm serious. If you're listening to this and you're in Canada, I'm going to fight you. No, I'm kidding. Blame Canada. But no, there's like...
So wait, what did they have the rule about closed captioning? Is it just that you have to have it in English and French?
Literally every commercial ever made.
It just had to have it in it.
It did, yeah.
Wow.
Thankfully not French, at least that I know of, yeah.
Yeah.
But that was a process because I don't know if you've ever tried to close caption things, but
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't do it. We actually paid a service to manage that for you. Because like this is going to be boring for the listeners, but there's that whole difference between like when it's burned in versus closed captioning versus what's that technology? There's like a certain type of file for like, for instance, in Facebook. You know how you have some videos where it's the closed captions turn on and off automatically for when like you don't have the volume on, you see the closed caption, but when you tap it, the closed captions go away and the audio comes on.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the world I was dealing with on a project. I could get to that later, but that was something that I had no clue how to do. And most of the places that I do editing with, it's like I'm the only person there. So it's like, I can't figure this out.
Right.
So we would use a service to do a lot of that stuff.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, I'm glad I didn't have to deal with that because it sounds like it was all a pain in the ass.
Dude, it was one of those cost cutting things. And then like I was the one who was best at it, and I shouldn't have been. I shouldn't have shown that I was competent enough to do it, because then it all fell on me. It
fell on you, but it was job security.
Pretty much. It was terrible though, because like the types of files that closed captionings come in, it's like the types of files had to be within the same frame as the video file you're working on. It's just a complete mess.
No, I hear you. I never liked dealing with it, and so I didn't have to. But all right, so Feld, you left there. You went to something that you're at now.
That's true.
There was a little bit of a gap, but
at Feld though, I did get to do a couple cool things. Just because, like, you know what I mean? Like I told you, it was mostly a grind, mostly commercials. It was 90% of it, but 10% I got to like do some cool. Like, they would do like a promotion at Bass Pro Shop or something. Okay. And so it's like somebody would shoot it, send me all the stuff, and I'd do like some cool 3-minute video of oh, look at all the kids playing with the Monster Jam stuff, and we're, like promoting it here, and like just documentary behind the scenes style stuff that ended up on DVD extras for like the world finals that they did and stuff like that. And they also didn't just own Monster Jam. They owned whatchamacallit, Monster Energy Supercross arena.
Don't know what that is, but
yeah, it's like dirt bike racing.
Okay,
but in stadiums,
Gotcha.
Literal stadiums like Anaheim and stuff. So there's like even video games based on it. See, I didn't know any of this stuff till I worked there. But like, then they had the circus, which closed down. Ringling Brothers. They had eventually. Okay, I'm gonna go into this real quick. So it's like we worked with Marvel. Like,
really, we
had talks with them early to do like a Marvel meets Monster Jam thing. So it was going to be like Marvel characters in dirt bikes and because we already had a couple of Marvel themed trucks. We had Iron Man and Spider-Man and Captain America. And it's like, so we wanted to work further with them and do like this like live motorsports / Marvel show that was also kind of performance art or something. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
And what was kind of neat was like me and like 3 other nerds that worked there who like one of them was like drew comic stuff too, like just like me. And one of them read them, you know, like and was like well versed in Avengers and Thor and, you know, just like an old school nerd kind of guy. So all of us got to like write this script and like pitch.
Are you serious? That's awesome.
So it's like we got to pitch this and all that stuff. And then it's like the owner of the company loved it and all that stuff. I didn't get to meet him, but my friend Neil, who used to work there, did. But he met Stan Lee.
Oh,
and like,
wow. That's
like he had a video. Like I got his autograph. Like he brought us back like comics with Stan Lee's autograph. Like, so that was pretty rad.
Oh, that's awesome.
And like he had a video of him saying like, whoever came up with this is a master of entertainment. And we were like, what? Stan Lee just called us out. You know what I mean? It was totally rad. So, but that slowly morphed into something called Marvel Universe Live, which is more like just a stunt show spectacular.
So did they did Marvel basically take what you guys originally wrote and turn it into something else just because they could?
Yeah. So what started out
and how much compensation did you get for that?
0. As always. Yeah, it's the so that slowly turned into Marvel Universe Live. But even that was cool because they sent us like all the promo art for all the characters and I got to make motion graphics, commercials that were Spider-Man themed and all that stuff. So that was kind of fun.
That's awesome. Very cool. Very, very cool. All right. So you left Feld, you moved on to other things, and you are now at your current job.
Yes.
Give us a quick little gist of that.
I work for a company called Broadcast Management Group. This division of it works inside and for TD Ameritrade. Okay. It's like a big stock trading how-to company. We have our own studio in there, and I've been there for about half a year. We'll see what happens. I can say this because it's been on the news and everything, but Charles Schwab might have bought it out. So we're still kind of working that out. We don't know what's going on yet. So I don't know. We'll see if I'm still there in a few months, but it's pretty cool for the time being. It's just, again, grunt work. I'm just like watching the shows as they happen. And then we need this guest cut, you know? So it's like you might do some light editing, but mostly it's just ins and outs, throw the disclaimer on there, throw it up on the website, you know what I mean? Kind of stuff. So it's just like kind of maintaining throwing segments of the TV show on the website, basically. So,
gotcha. Cool. And really quick, just in case there are other people out there listening who are really interested in editing, I am curious, what applications do you prefer using or which ones are you versed at? Because I know you actually know quite a few video editing software applications, but which one's your favorite? Let's start with that.
Well, the big 3, you know, if anybody says Vegas Video, just, what are you doing? Go back to 1992. No, but like, but whatever. People can say that about me because I like Avid the best. That's probably what I'm fastest at. But it's not the one I have, and that is a industry standard. It totally is, yeah. And it hasn't changed in like forever. You know what I mean? I was still using like a Windows computer that was holding Avid on it, that Avid Nitrous or whatever. That was like, they still come in these giant boxes. You know what I mean? And like these like towers of hard drives that are so outdated, and like just all this stuff, and it still looks the same, but I don't know, just using it is so easy for me. The big 3 I use are Avid. I'm using Premiere again at work now currently, and I use Final Cut X at home, which you got me into because I had never touched Final Cut X before. Yeah, like doing stuff with you. So I like used to use Final Cut 7 through 9. And that's how I got to learn Premiere too, because it's basically the same thing. Yeah, and that's what I remember hearing about those two applications. Like they were very, very similar. And then Final Cut Pro X came out, and the film industry freaked out and gave up on Final Cut and focused on all the Final Cut users switched to Premiere, right, or Avid, either one of those. And then really quick. You are, for Kicker Rock, the animation guru. What's your favorite application to use for animation? Adobe After Effects, for sure. Awesome. I tried to learn motion once, and I just couldn't get the hang of it. It was too much. It was like function based, and I'm more like just timeline, keyframes, all that crap, effects based. Cool, you know? Cool. Because I mean, like After Effects kind of acts as an editor, really. Yeah, it's made by Adobe. It's the same. Well, I mean, you can pretty much if you wanted to, you can edit an entire thing in After Effects because you could bring in sound, you could bring in video. It's just that any color correction and things like that, I'm sure are a little bit more Right.
complicated.
Sound is not. It's not good for sound.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, like it'll export and import sound, but it's not that editable for sound, you know?
Gotcha.
Or if there is, then I don't know how to do it.
Cool. I'm going to jump into just really quick, like my editing application preference, which is like the main one. Yeah. No, that's fine. That's fine. I'm sick of hearing about you, JC. I got to be honest. I think it's the most I've ever heard about you. We'll go into my background in a minute, but just to stay on the application situation, you said that I got you hooked on Final Cut Pro, and that's basically because I didn't go to school for film or editing. I went to school for advertising. Like when I was younger, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I realized that, you know, it would be really, really cool to like make TV commercials. I wanted to be a screenwriter, but in my mind, it was like, you know, that's going to be really hard to get into. Television commercials, that's like telling very short, very, very short stories. Yeah. Let me give that a try. So I ended up going to Columbia College and studying advertising. I'll get back to that in a second, but all of my editing was just this desire and passion of wanting to make movies. So like back in the late 90s and early 2000s, like I would just have like my parents, you know, camcorder, or I went out and purchased like one cheap, you know, camcorder with those 8mm tapes, and just film stuff and then bring it into my computer. And at the time that I was learning, there was a application called Pinnacle Studio, which was on a Windows machine. Yeah. And it was very, very basic, but very fun to use. And then along the lines, at some time, Apple ended up coming out with iMovie. And I ended up, you know, starting to edit like my home video fun stuff in there and just learning iMovie. And then as time went on, I ended up getting a job and they had Final Cut. It was like a diluted version of the Final Cut Pro. I forgot what it was called. Thank you. Final Cut Express.
I had that too.
And I would play around with that and I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool.
On my G4 laptop in 2004.
Yeah, exactly. It was around that time. So it was like I was always playing around with video editing applications. And I want to say when we first started Kick Rock, I was doing some of the like, actually before Kick Rock, like 2008, 2009, I was doing stuff in iMovie just for fun. And then it was either iMovie or Final Cut Express and playing with the two. And then Final Cut Pro 10 came out. And that took my abilities like leaps and bounds. And I think it's because of their model at the time was basically like, you know, iMovie is for getting people when they're young used to this type of functioning timeline and all of this like simple way of editing. And then they did that switch that we talked about earlier where Final Cut 7 or Final Cut 9 went away and Final Cut 10, like they completely redid everything.
Yeah.
Well, they did it so that the people who knew how to use iMovie had this easy transition.
Right.
Which was an interesting way to go. But I kind of believe that in a way what they did was smart because they were not for the pros, the heavy hardcore pros in film industry, but more from the perspective of, and there's a total marketing perspective. Let's get these kids on those MacBooks hooked on iMovie. And when they're just ready to take the leap to something a little bit more robust, they just got to spend $300 for Final Cut Pro 10. And they've got this more robust, not at the time when it first came out, it wasn't comparable to professional editing software, but it was close. But now it's like you got all the free updates over time. And you constantly, no matter when there's a new version, you automatically get it because you paid that $2.99 in the beginning.
There's still things I don't know about it, but I have a better grasp of it now.
But they've pretty much added all those things that were in the original Final Cut 7 and 9 versions of, you know, like multicam and I mean, you can do color correction within there with all like multiple color wheels and tons of audio manipulation. So it's like, I think they've done a really good job of bringing it up there. And also in the world we live in where, you know, getting content out quickly, I feel like editing in Final Cut, there's a lot of people out there, not from the film industry, but from the social media perspective. quickly jump in Final Cut, create something, export it, and get it out, in like a 2-day turnaround time.
Right.
Which I think is helpful in the times that we live in.
Dude, one of the most alluring aspects of the program is that like Avid still costs like stupid amounts of money.
Yeah, it's like $1,200, right?
Yeah,
$1,500 or something.
And
like that.
Adobe has shifted a little bit to like be like a service-based program,
subscription-based monthly fees. I pay $53 a month for Adobe CC for all applications.
Yeah, and then but then Final Cut X is like just $250, and you have the whole damn thing.
Yeah,
like,
and you get all
awesome.
the updates. Yeah,
because that's some pro stuff. Like people really still use that now, or really, totally actually use that now. Like what's funny is that like some of the lower end commercials you'll see and stuff like that. Like you'll see a transition where you're like, they took the most basic transition. Like okay, when to anybody listening, you've probably seen our sketch. We Are 30. Yeah. And like, so when we watched that,
so deliberate.
You and I like both noticed, we're like, we know that transition. We know that basic ass font that they used. Like they didn't even fix the, like we're talking about when you see those, like we're 18, call us like commercials. It's like they, cause we had to do research to like watch some of them to get this sketch going. And like,
it was like,
they used them, but they didn't even change the parameters of like, or like, slide the scale around to like how big the font is or what font it is or this transition.
It was like default settings.
Yeah, it was default settings. Thank you. That's the word I was searching for.
Even the font, it was like Futura. Like your basic like Futura font and just like 1-800. It's like even when we were editing that, we were typing in the information. We're like, it's exact. It's exactly like an 800 number. This is crazy.
That's funny. We just got to shitty edit on purpose.
Yeah.
And it looked just like
yeah, exactly. Oh man. And it's another shout out. Okay, so you use After Effects for your animation. So I know animation as well, and I've done a lot of client work where I'm doing just, some whatever, like lower thirds or intro and outros, like making logos animate and stuff like that. And I've done a few more complex where I'm having to do a lot of like animated text and graphic elements dancing around on screen. But the funny thing is, I just went ahead and paid, and this is what makes me laugh, is for $50, you get Apple Motion 5 for $50.
Really?
All the updates, one after the other, whenever they come out, you get the latest versions for $50. I swear to God, Motion 5 is extremely... it just has a ton of features to do a lot of really cool animation if you take the time to learn it. But same with Final Cut Pro 10 and Motion 5, both of those, it's like they're both Mac only. We're living in a world where majority of, even in the advertising world, majority of the agencies or like studios that I've like come across with or worked with, they tend to they're all in that Adobe Creative Cloud subscription world. So by default, they're just using Premiere for video and After Effects for animation because it makes sense. It comes with all the other creative applications. So if you're going to pay, $53 a month for Adobe CC to use Adobe, InDesign, Illustrator, and Photoshop, you might as well do all your video stuff in Premiere and After Effects.
That's funny.
And just keep it all.
I just learned Illustrator last year.
Well, one, that's
and InDesign.
Okay, so both those applications I know like the back of my hand. Photoshop, I'm like middle of the road. But one thing that I regret not being good in After Effects is the simple fact that I believe it's like you can do your you can create your graphics in Illustrator, and then you basically just link your file. From what I understand, I don't know After Effects. You could just link your Illustrator file to your After Effects file, and then if you have to make an edit to some element in your Illustrator file, it'll auto update in your After Effects.
Right.
Where for me, it is such a very laborious process. Because all my graphics are usually created in Illustrator, and then I have to export for each element an individual either PNG or an individual EPS file to put into Motion 5. And if I make any changes, I got to go back, recreate, rebring in, and make sure nothing shifted. So it's just like it's very late, like time consuming. And
Dude, how much of the audience have we just lost?
This is the episode
Throughout this whole thing.
hears.
This episode's so fucking geeky.
Oh shit. So then with that being said, let me jump into like my career, because I kind of said like I didn't go to school for video. I had this dream of making films, and that's really where my story is, like this dream and wish of like storytelling.
Right.
So for my day job,
two seem to have proved kind of synergetic.
Yeah, exactly. Because like I started as a copywriter in advertising, and then worked my way up to senior copywriter. Then at this job called Guest in Advertising, the VP of Creative Services, Rena Zito, who I love and respect, she gave me the opportunity of being an associate creative director because she saw something in me. I was always that person who would speak up, not just from we would do these things called walk the wall. And you basically hang up all your creative, whatever projects you're reviewing, and you'd mark up changes and blah, blah, blah. And I was I'd always be the one who would not just speak to the copy, but also speak to what I'm seeing visually and just make comments to it. And like, even though I wasn't the art director on the project, I'd still make suggestions. And 9 out of 10 times, like people would be like, oh, that's a good idea. And they would run with it. So luckily Rena saw something in me and kind of coached me in becoming a associate creative director. And then I moved on to creative director. And then while I was doing all of this, I'd get jobs at very small. And you were talking before where like, you work at a small company versus a big company. One pro that I found with working in a small company, you tend to wear a lot of hats. And by that, it's like, yeah. And it was like, I remember specifically, I went to this startup ad agency called Sterling Silver Creative, and there it was. I knew editing from the iMovie / early Final Cut perspective, but we didn't have anyone else to do the work. So it was like, oh, Sergio, can you create this graphic, and then can you do something animated with it? And I'd be like, yeah, and I wouldn't actually know how to do it, but I'd be willing to like Google search the shit of how to do this.
Right.
So like I'd be working, granted I was working like extremely like a ton of hours, but it was also education, because it would be like, yeah, sure, I would be at work until 10 o'clock at night, but it's like, I need to figure out how to do this because I told them I'd do this, and I would do it. And I'd come back the next day and be like, here you go. And they'd be like, oh my God, this is great. And it'd be like, yeah, well, I just spent 12 hours more than I was supposed to. So I'm only going to like say I did this in 4 hours. Really, really took me 10.
Dude, that's funny. It reminds me of, I've been kind of, for inspiration for my comic book shit lately, I've been watching like videos from like artists I admire. Like, and one was Todd McFarlane, the creator of Spawn and a former Spider-Man artist. And he was like talking about like his toys getting noticed, like, and they said like, can you produce like 100,000 of these by May or whatever? And he says, yeah. And he's like, always say yes, always say yes, and figure out how later.
Yeah. And that is solid advice to anyone. And that goes more than just in a creative world. It's almost like, I think any young person who's starting off in a career, who's willing to give up personal time, I did that a majority of my career, said yes, and figured stuff out as I went along because...
It took me a while. I used to show my cards a lot more.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for honesty, but at some point...
Yeah. But yeah, so, just working in ad agencies, particularly smaller ones, being exposed to just doing, like having to wear a lot of hats. Like, granted, I started as a copywriter, but I wasn't afraid to jump into InDesign, jump into Illustrator, jump into Photoshop to take care of stuff. And I was always the person who would like lean over to an art director that I worked with or someone that I knew and be like, hey, that was really cool. How did you do that? And then they'd show me and I'd try to redo it myself just because I'm like, I want to learn that. So that's just kind of how I learned all that. And then it was really with Kicker Rock too, where then we actually started like first talking in 2009, and then 2010 is when we started actually meeting regularly. And then we finally lost the sight in 2011. This is before your time, but it was really those early days that I did way more editing and really testing and figuring things out that really gave me, the experience that I have now, where I feel like I can honestly tell people like I'm an editor because
you definitely are. Now.
Yeah, because I didn't go to school for it. But I've done enough projects, both personal and like things for work. Nothing like nothing like commercials or big things like that. But it's funny with my work life, it's a lot of internal communication videos. So like talking heads, maybe it's like a CEO or a VP, talking about their company's values or whatever like that. And it was just really doing a lot of this Kick Rock stuff and learning stuff and doing stuff on my, with us as a team, but like figuring out lighting, figuring out camera, figuring out editing, that now on every job that I get, it's usually like, and the world that we live in, I have to admit, we're living in a time where they want everything fast, cheap, and then like smaller scale production teams, where I've done in the past year, I've done like 3 or 4 projects where it's just like, Sergio, do you think you can bring your equipment tomorrow, set up the lighting, we film a couple people, and then you give me a video that we can post like next week for social? And it's like, yeah, no problem. And it would just be me managing all that alongside like one of the account people to give like whoever's the talking head, the talking points and stuff like that. So it's just like, it's almost like my weird path in career and my willingness to stay up late and work and figure out stuff has helped me do the stuff for Kick Rock and for my day job today.
No, it's true. It's like, and also the more you do it and your side projects and all that stuff, it's like the more shortcuts you figure out too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Shortcuts are huge.
This is funny. Okay, like this is a small example, but like for one of my like midterm projects or whatever, like they asked for like some graphic intensive After Effects thing in some class at school. I shot this thing where my brother and sister fought with lightsabers. I just used like toy lightsabers, and then like, but this is all I knew how to do in After Effects at the time, was just like use the draw tool to like literally draw the frame by frame the lasers like across them. You know what I mean? So like it was so like it looks okay, but like then after a while I like now like I recently did like some lightsaber thing with like my niece or whatever, like just for fun.
I remember you said it.
I posted it, and like it's like I know now to like use masking tools and glows and fades and like all kinds of stuff, and now I can do it like in an hour instead of in a weekend, and like it looks way better. Because like you learn just how many tools there are. And it's funny for like Adobe programs and stuff like that. It's like, and editing programs in general, all this stuff is like, they're really just like a pencil. You know what I mean? It's like, you can pick it up, but it's like, you got to learn how to use it. And like everybody uses it different and whatever, when it comes like art, in like a artistic kind of fashion.
Honestly, that's what I love about creative work, is so many times it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know what the expression is, but it's like there's a million ways to get to one direction.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the way creativity is. It's like I can show you a final thing to somebody. Let's just make this up. Let's say it's a picture of like a cat on top of a house with a purple jacket, and there's like trees behind them. And you could say, figure out how to make this happen. And no one person is going to come like have the exact same way of doing that.
Right.
Everyone's going to have, and you might even watch it one person. You're like, oh, I didn't even think about doing it that way. Or like, I didn't even think that would work, or just knew that tool existed.
Right.
There's so many times where I'm like sitting next to a creative at work and just like having a conversation and trying to do something. I'm like, fuck, why can't I figure out how to get this graph to work in Illustrator? And they're like, oh, did you go to the graph this blah, blah, blah tool? And I'm like, what? Like, why haven't I not known about this tool in Illustrator that automatically creates a graph and you just type in the numbers and it does? Like, I would do that stuff manually in the past, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a second, they've already got a tool where it's just, you just click on it, type in some numbers, and everything's like exactly the way you need it.
Exactly.
It's like,
like there's even stuff in Photoshop where I'm like there's so many deep things you can get into in those programs, and like I know like a tiny percentage of them, and that's still way more than most people don't. You know what I mean?
And in Photoshop world, I think of you as the expert and me as the like beginner, because half the time
I have imposter syndrome sometimes. You know what I mean? Like I really do. You know that is, where it's just like you feel like like, I can't do this, you know. Sometimes when somebody gives you a project, you just look at it and you go like, I'm nobody. You feel like an eighth grader or something that just suddenly like has got a job and is in your dad's suit, just standing there like, what the fuck, you know. But then like a half an hour passes and you're all right, I got this, you know what I mean. And then like you'll kind of tackle it or whatever.
I didn't realize it was a name for my syndrome, but I have that all the time. And the best way I can describe that is, have you ever seen the movie Adaptation?
No.
So, oh shoot, I forgot. It's with Nicolas Cage, but the writer, Kaufman. He did Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and the writer for that.
I know what you're talking about.
So basically, this writer, and this is what I love about this movie, is like the writer writes Charlie Kaufman. He's the writer. He did Being John Malkovich before that, which is a weird, kooky movie to begin with. Then he comes out with Adaptation, which is a writer about him being a writer in a movie. With a twin brother, which he doesn't have, but his twin brother is like his alter ego type of thing. I got way off base here. The point I was going to make is the movie begins with him waking up, going to his computer to start writing a script. And it just starts off, and what makes me laugh is I used to do this all the time as a writer, and even now I'll do this when I can't think of anything. He just starts typing, what the fuck am I doing? I can't do this. I'm an asshole. There's no good ideas coming with me. I'm just like, I'm burnt out. I'm not going to be able to be successful. Everyone's going to hate this. And he's literally typing this out, like, and you just hear the voiceover going as he's typing. He's totally giving himself shit. And then he rolls into his work. And it's like, there's so many times where it's like, that's how a lot of, like, honestly, that's probably like every single project I start with this doubt and hatred of myself. Right. Of like, I'm not good enough to, like you said, you just kind of half hour later of all this doubt whirling in your head, you just say, all right, let me figure this out. And then there you have that moment where things click and everything's fine.
That's what sucks is like, you can't stay in that mindset for too long. And you can't self-depreciate too much because you know what? Yeah, it's like creative people are so fucking competitive, and I wish they weren't. You know what I mean? Like I always whine about this. Is like I wish there was more like of a communal vibe to creativity. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to like a bunch of filmmakers getting together or a bunch of artists getting together, like comic book artists, like I do, and it's just like. There's just, I don't know, some of them are really down to earth and really nice. And then like there's a huge amount of them that are just so like they'll eat you alive and they'll like take your insecurities and use it against you. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's just like, so it's like you can't dwell in the I don't know anything for too long. Yeah. Like, or else you'll like, I don't know. It's almost like it'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know, self-defeating prophecy, really, whatever. Yes. But,
no, that's a really good point. Yeah.
So sometimes you gotta flaunt that, like, all right, I know what the fuck I'm doing. Shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like.
But you don't want to be that verbal person who's like that, because those are the people that I hate, that are just pompous and like walk around acting like they're the shit.
Totally. Yeah. What's funny is a lot of time, because then there's a flip side to that. There's a lot of aspects to this, you know what I mean? But it's like a Venn diagram of unfortunate personality traits. Some overlap others, but it's like I've noticed that sometimes the most pompous people, you know, like are sometimes the ones that don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Yeah, you know, like sometimes the ones that like I'm just talking about like small bursts of confidence when I'm talking about having imposter syndrome and trying to get out of it.
Yeah, no, I totally
but like,
I wasn't implying the latter.
No, of course, no, I know you weren't, but it's like the people that are out there that just won't shut up about like, oh, I know story structure and oh, I know this and all that stuff, you know, just that will not stop and like just, you know, will like condescend and stuff. They're usually the ones that like have not had training, have been working on the same script for 5 years. Yeah. You know, and it's like, whereas like, you know, we jam out 25 things and have learned along the way that 22 of them like suck and 3 are amazing or something, you know what I mean? Because we tried everything and stuff like that. And then these are the people that are just like sitting there like, I'm working on my masterpiece and like have not had proper training and like are just talking out their ass because like they watched, I don't know, like a Kevin Smith movie and heard him like talk about like how he directs like in the DVD commentary, and suddenly they're like autodidacts, you know? Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's just nice to hear that like I'm not alone. I'm thinking the way that I think about
totally.
having to get started on projects. Let's transition now, because we have been talking a lot about ourselves and the boring technical stuff that most of the listeners aren't going to want to hear. Let's really quick just talk about like our favorite. I think we both mentioned this, and I'll just say it honestly. We both said at the beginning of the podcast, like, I don't think I could name an editor that I really like their work. So let's just talk about films that we think are just amazingly edited.
Right.
So feel free to go first.
I watched Indiana Jones so many times because that I know the name Michael Kahn.
Oh.
Because
so
it always said
editor.
Michael Kahn, Ace, and I was always like, oh, that's the editor of Indiana Jones. I literally know no other editors.
I know, isn't it? I almost feel bad like that we sat here and made this episode about editing, and like I can't honestly say which.
We're trolls under bridges. You know what I mean? Like,
but so essential in the
right?
filmmaking process.
Unsung heroes for sure, because like Star Wars 77, the original. It's like think of all the shitty like 60s and 70s sci-fi movies you would have seen on Mystery Science Theater and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like Star Wars could have ended up like one of those. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A couple of things saved it. I mean, a lot of things saved it, but like one of them's like John Williams' score and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean? But it's like the brisk like pace of the movie. You know what I mean? It's just like they don't like have these long lingering shots like a 60s movie used to be or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like where it's like you're just bored to tears and you're just like, somebody will be like standing in a desert planet looking around just like, I can't believe I'm stranded here. And then it's like long pause and he's like, these damned aliens. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just, it goes on forever and you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
In Star Wars, it was just like, you had this beautiful score of Luke looking at the sunsets and then they move on, And then it's like they move on. Even with these like old timey, like wiping transitions and stuff like that, you know? So it's like they got from place to place to place and all the action was very fast paced. And it's like that movie could have ended up like, I don't know the runtime, but like it could have ended up like 2.5 hours of like bloated. This? What the fuck is this?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
But yeah, and you're so right in regards to like the editing and early film was you held on stuff for a very long time, even in comedies, whereas just like I felt like it would have been funnier if you would have cut away sooner.
Right.
And then your comment for Star Wars, there were a lot of things, but like also like the sound design in that film, I felt was like just also added to those quick transitions because a lot of times you get that sweep, that transition of the wipe, but then you'd also get like the scream of a fighter like going by to add to that effect, and it'd just be like it felt more just gigantic in scope. Which is kind of like, I know we said earlier, like we're the unsung heroes. I feel like both sound and editing are the two things that a lot of people, like just the mainstream people, the mass world doesn't really appreciate as much. But it's like that saying where it's like you don't notice good editing, you don't notice good sound, but you always notice bad sound or bad editing. And like, so it's just one of those things like, if you really want to get noticed, either you got to be the greatest film of all time or just shit.
Dude, what bad editing do you notice that drives you crazy?
I don't know. I don't even just lingering on shots or just like a bad cut. Yeah. Just things like that.
For me, it's not really anyone's fault sometimes because sometimes there's no way to do this. And you and I have been in this situation, but bad match cuts.
Oh, yeah.
Where like a character's head is tilted down and then suddenly they're looking up at the person in the cut,
Yeah.
I love The Witcher. I watched that recently.
Okay.
Fucking love it. Awesome. But like more than 5 times I noticed like bad match cutting in it. And I was just like, man, did they just not?
And that's new. You think they would have done like a better job with that?
Yeah.
And this is a weird thing that like I've always noticed growing up. And it's one of those editing tricks. I wouldn't even say trick, but it's a thing that's often done. It's the over the shoulder shot of somebody. Let's say, you're going back and forth between two people having a conversation, and you're using that over the shoulder so that when the person's talking, you're usually over the shoulder of the person not talking. But sometimes in editing, you need to have the over the shoulder of the individual talking because you just want to get the facial expression from the person receiving the dialogue or something like that. But for some reason, growing up, I would always notice when the dialogue wouldn't line up with the over-the-shoulder shot and I could see the mouth moving inaccurately to the line. For some reason, that always distracted me.
Right. Or sometimes their jaw is not moving at all.
Not moving at all, but you hear the words coming out. It's like, wait a second.
Right.
Like, I get why. It's like somebody really wanted to have that facial expression, or they just needed to use that angle, or they dubbed, they had to get the audio in post or something. But I would always notice when those over the shoulders wouldn't line up for what was being said from the person whose shoulder it was.
Or sometimes in older movies, especially, I notice when something is dubbed and then transitions into the on-camera mic. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Here's one that I always notice because I've seen it a million times. Ghostbusters. I didn't notice this as a kid, but I definitely noticed as a post-editor adult is when Dana Barrett gets tranquilized by Peter Venkman, so that she'll stop being crazy because she's possessed by Zool. And the camera is slowly moving around the room, and then you eventually see Venkman on the phone, and he's talking to Egon. And he's like, Venkman, what's wrong? And he's just like, I think we can get a guest shot on Wild Kingdom, And then it's like his voice is super clear, super duper like produced, like it's in a sound booth.
Right.
And then like it's like blah 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 blah. And then like suddenly it cuts to him going, and she thinks she's the gatekeeper. And then like it's a very different, very like crunchy
tone,
sound, and it's like got echo to it that there wasn't on the previous audio. You know what I mean? So it's like they kind of whatever the original line was or whatever they didn't like to get out. Yeah. So
yeah. Oh man. Okay, so really quick, favorite movie or director of movies that you'd want to point out as far as like for editing?
Right. We both know what we're going to say.
Yeah. I know. I figured let's just get to it.
I mean, you're not supposed to notice editing, but sometimes when you are supposed to notice it, it's just as cool. Like it's rare, but we love Edgar Wright. We're Edgar Wright fanboys.
Absolutely. 100%.
Like Scott Pilgrim versus the World is like, that's like masterclass in editing. You know? It's like every joke lands, every effect lands, everything. And it's like,
even the animated text, like just the way everything just comes on screen.
Right. And
amazing.
Sometimes the cut is the joke.
Yeah. Exactly.
And like Coen Brothers are good with that too, in like a much slower paced kind of way. You know what I mean? Like they'll just kind of, I always go back to this one, but in Big Lebowski, when like he hammers he's expecting people to, like come into his house, and it's like he hammers the board with the nails into the ground and then sets the chair up, like against the door so that they can't get in.
Yep.
And it's like he walks out of frame and the camera stays focused on the, you know what I mean? And it's just like they know to keep it there and not to cut and just have when they open the door the wrong way and the chair just falls outside his apartment, you know? It's like Coen Brothers are really good with even the one moment of levity in No Country for Old Men where like it's like you just hear this like mariachi band playing and it shows Josh Brolin waking up, like in Mexico. And then like just like the cut when they like smash cut to like the fucking mariachi band standing over him playing, you know what I mean? With just these dead serious looks on their faces. It's like they know the exact moment where it becomes funny to show that there is actually a band. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, and it's also like, and I know I'm getting a little bit out of editing, but it's like even David Fincher is one of those directors who he obviously has sat closely with his cinematographer and editor to talk through exactly what shots for shots he wants. Because like, even on like, for instance, like The Social Network, he does those great, for instance, there's that one scene where Jesse Eisenberg he's being depositioned and he's talking about how his best friend helped him, build Facebook, and then they do this cutaway to an empty chair to reflect the fact that his friend is not in the room with him. But it was just one of those things where it's like this nice cut and scene shot that was thought through. But the way they do it in that scene, it's just such a smooth transition that it's one of those things like what we said earlier. It's good editing, good direction.
Right.
Probably nobody even noticed it as being that. But for me, it was just like, oh, that was just such a cool way to just cut from two people talking to an empty chair to emphasize the fact that this important individual isn't even in the room.
Right.
So that's just one of those cool, like, little editing, directing things that I just always appreciated.
I suddenly thought of Black Swan. It's funny that you said.
I've never even seen that movie.
Oh, really?
But go ahead. What's the point?
You said David Fincher, and for some reason I was like, oh, I know that guy. And I was like, oh, and I'm thinking of Darren Aronofsky. But like, I don't know why I got those two confused. It's stupid. But like, it's like the movie quickly. Okay, I'm just gonna say, my brother said a really funny joke about that movie after we both saw it. He was just like, that movie is like every time you think you're gonna get a boner, you go, ugh. But like, to expound on that, there's like it's like there's several like kind of dream sequences. You don't know when they're happening, but like you know when they cut out. You know what I mean? Kind of like Nightmare on Elm Street. And like, so it's like there will be like very erotic sequences where like Natalie Portman's like masturbating in a tub or something, and then like having sex with Mila Kunis's character or something like that. It always like starts out very erotic, and it's like cut very slow, you know, and then like the speed of the cuts increases, and then like it just gets more nightmarish as it goes, and like suddenly fingertips are getting chopped off and like fucked up shit happens. Like it's a really good movie. You got to see it.
And didn't they win? They won Oscars that year. I don't know for what. Was it best film or best writing, directing, something?
I don't remember.
But nonetheless, that's one of those movies where it's like it was just off my radar at the time, and I didn't see it. But
it's dope. It's worth one watch.
Yeah, and this isn't the first time our group has talked about that film. So right. I definitely need to get on board with that.
Oh yeah, sometimes just comedic editing. One of my favorite cutaway jokes ever is like, because sometimes the director knowing how something's gonna go in the edit is like, just when it works, it's genius. You know what I mean? Because sometimes directors are just directing without thinking about the edit that much. You know what I mean? But then some are, I mean, they always have to a degree. But sometimes they have something so razor sharp planned, you know, that it's like Airplane. My favorite like visual gag of all time is in the first Airplane movie. It's when I know so many.
There's so many gags.
It's when Robert Stack is like being called upon. So like he gets his like captain's outfit on or whatever it is, his uniform on, and it's like the camera follows him. He's standing in a mirror, adjusting his tie and his shirt, you know, like giving a monologue.
Yeah,
he's just like, oh, they need me, and like all that stuff. And then like he's looking in the mirror. It cuts away to the guy being attacked by his dog, and then like when it cuts back, he walks out of the mirror. Like it's like it wasn't a mirror he was looking at. It's suddenly a doorway, you know. Like,
I forgot about
it's so
that.
Goddamn
scene.
Funny.
That movie is probably. I kind of feel like we should watch that after we're done podcasting. But that movie is like the early days of just like how many puns can we get into a movie and just make it as funny and ridiculous as hell? Because like that movie, I just remember watching it as a kid and just rolling.
Yep.
I want to believe that was very much inspiration for like an Edgar Wright or just definitely. Somebody for those visual gags that are just like when they're filmed right and edited right on screen, they explode. Right. And it's awesome.
And even just the obnoxious, like fast cutting during the action sequences and Hot Fuzz, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they're just like, they're so over the top. Like that. It's just just the cuts are funny, you know?
Yeah.
But then they know when to keep it wide. Like when he's like clearly jumping off trampolines, like bounding over like all those fences, you know what I mean? And then like he fucks up, you know, like the guy after him fucks up, you know?
Yeah.
It's like they know, like in Big Lebowski, they know when to hold it and keep it wide when the car crashes, you know? I always said cars crashes are always funny when they happen in wide shots and they don't cut.
Yeah.
You know, like
you just see
Hot Fuzz
like,
also when he crashes into the tree, you know, at the end.
Yeah.
Timothy Dalton. Sorry. Okay.
That's awesome. All right. Honestly, this was a fun podcast. Just you and I talking about editing and our favorite films of editing. So I think with that, JT, do you want to play Tony?
Yeah. What am I doing here? This has been Kick Rock. I'm just doing my my
what
airplane driver sketch. I'm just doing that. This is good. Whatever. You listened. You had fun. Yay. Goodbye.
All right. That's been this episode of 2 Drink Minimum. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Remember to download and subscribe to our podcast. You can download us on iTunes, on Spotify, whatever your podcast medium of choice is. And you can reach out to us on our Facebook page. Why not? I mean, hey, you're indoors. You're not going anywhere anyway, right? Anyway, this has been 2 Drink Minimum. We've been drinking, thinking, and talking shop. Cheers, everybody.